Hey everyone, it's Alan over at Cobblers Plus, and in today's video we're going to be working on a pair of shoes that most these days won't think is a great one. Well, actually, by today's standards of their new line, isn't great, but these old vintage ones are phenomenal. But these are some GH Bass and Company, Weekender Chukka Boots. So we're going to resole them. Basically redo the whole thing. These are really cool, very vintage. It was very hard for me to make out the exact model number and everything, but I'll make sure to let you guys know what everything is. And if you guys know anything, definitely leave it in the comments section as far as details if you know much about the particular boot here that we've got. But let's go ahead and start breaking it down and work on them. So again, thank you for joining us. Let me just kind of get everything situated here. So I was trying to figure out exactly what these were, but I was able to kind of make that out there. So it's GH Bass and Company, Wilton, Maine. Okay, there we go. And so I was able to make that out at least. As far as this information here, actually on camera it shows way better to me. I'm looking at it now. So it's 1500213442. That's what it looks like, at least. In person, this is way harder to see. Can't even really make out what it says made in. Man, I really can't make that out in person. Maybe you guys can make that out a little bit better. I'm trying to see it on camera. I'll have to zoom in when I'm finally doing it on video, but I'll probably type up whatever I can get as far as information off of these boots. But on camera, it actually turned out a lot better looking as well. So as you can see, we've got some Red Dainite Soles on these guys. That's what we're going to be using. So set those guys aside. Make sure to set those little insoles aside so we don't, or insoles, little heel pads so we don't lose them. We're definitely going to have to clean them up some and everything. Now, these boots are in fairly rough shape. They're old. What do you expect from an older pair? But let's start out by actually breaking down, because we're going to re-welt these with a new split welt. So I'm going to start taking apart that welt then. Alright everyone, so this one was a little bit on the rougher side just because obviously it's an older pair, everything's dried out, but I've got the sole off. Ta-da! Yeah, it was all dried up and crispy and ripping and stuff, and yeah, you can see right there, it's split on the sole, but here it is underneath. So got all that thread and everything that I'm going to have to go around and pull out. I already started on the other boot as far as taking that out. That's an interesting little spot that came unstitched or something. I don't know. I don't know what happened there necessarily, but whatever. Anyways, so I've got the shanks here. They're kind of small little shanks. I'll probably change it out for this gentleman here, since we're going to put something a little bit nicer onto these boots and everything. They had the cork filling. Obviously, some of the cork came apart. There is this little cardboard piece, which it's not coming off the sole here. It was there to kind of cover up that shank there, and looks like it might come out, but probably in pieces. No, looks like not in pieces, just one layer peeled off. But this thing's done for, and there's really not much purpose for this other than the distribution of the wear, or the distribution of the pressure of the shank a little bit, and kind of helps hold that shank in place too. But that's usually when they're using not such a great glue, which you can see there's a chunk of that glue. Man, the thing just rips and falls apart. Anyways, but at this point I'm gonna go ahead and go through and pull all these little stitches. It's a very time consuming thing to do, but you got to do it. If you don't pull these stitches, they kind of get in the way of stitching on the new welt, and it's not a pretty sight, in other words. So we try to remove as much as we possibly can. Sometimes I will admit that there are sometimes some areas where the stitching is just so hard to get to and so hard to get out that unfortunately we kind of have to leave it behind, but that's kind of how it goes. It's a lot better than what a lot of factories do still. When you send your shoes or boots off to get factory resold, they have a machine stitch it on, so it doesn't matter whether they pull the old stitches or don't. It really makes no difference for them, because that machine is still creating new holes and all that kind of stuff all across the shoes every time. That's why after a certain period of time, if you've sent your shoes off for factory resole, they have a limit. They actually will limit the amount of times that they can resole a pair of shoes just for that particular reason. Where for us cobblers, we tend to stitch these things on by hand. It takes a fair amount more time, so it costs a little bit extra on average than if you were to send it off to a factory to get it recrafted. Again, that's if we're replacing the welt. But Goodyear welted shoes are typically designed so that you don't have to replace the welt, as long as you're taking care of your shoes, catching the soles in time before you wear into the welt and everything. You really do not have to do much as far as having the welt replaced. On average, you can get a pair of boots resoled probably, I would say, anywhere between 3 up to even 8 times before having to have the welt torn off and replaced. But on average, most what I see is about 3 or 4 times that people tend to wear down their boots or shoes, and then the welt needs to be replaced. But I've also seen people wear it down in one time, just saying, because the person didn't catch it in time and wore into the welt and everything, and just damaged up the welt and all that kind of stuff. So, but these are obviously kind of on the older side, and they really need a welt refreshment and get some new fresh welt on there, because this one's just all kinds of falling apart and ripping, and it's not going to withstand getting resoled. This one, as you can tell, it's got that kind of stitching there that's decorative. That's not actually the real stitching that holds the welt in place. And I can reapply another one there, but unfortunately these stitches, even though they look nice, they are kind of something that may structurally wear down the boots a little bit. So if they're my boots, I prefer not to put it on, and on this one we're just putting just the straight split welt on them and then putting on the sole. So let me go ahead and get all these stitches plucked, clean out some of that cork on the edges. The center of the cork, I will go ahead and sand that out later on, like this one here. I've already plucked the stitches all around. There's that little bit of cork. We'll go ahead and sand that after. But let me get that going, and we'll move on to the baths that we're going to do on it. Alright everyone, so I've been giving these a bath for a little while, kind of twisting and turning them and stuff, so it's time to go ahead and get them out of the bath. You can see that water's pretty gross looking already, so time to let them dry, so let's move them along. Alright everyone, so I'd gone ahead and got the welt taken care of, because it's kind of a slow process. I wasn't going to burden you guys with the welt stitching. So one thing I'll point out with the welt stitching, we do use a black or a brown thread usually. From the factory, surprisingly, you may have seen that they tend to use a white color thread very often, and I'm not too excited about that, but most of the time they do that either, one, as an indicator, or two, just because the company doesn't really get any other colors of it, or they've bought a large bulk amount of it already in white. Plus, typically, most of the thread that they use to stitch welts on is a cotton thread, not a nylon, where we're using a nylon that also has wax in it and everything. So a good upgrade just with the stitching alone on these things. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put some shanks in there. I'm putting new ones in. The old ones were kind of really thin and not that great and everything like that, and I can't even find them anymore anyways, but we're putting some better shanks in there. And so I'll kind of point this out, especially to some of the cobblers out there. So these are what shanks we typically use. We have other variants too, but you can see how shiny and smooth it is. If you're a cobbler, put in the little extra bit of time, a couple of minutes maybe at most, but rough them up. You can see this one's a bit more roughed up there, maybe. I don't know if the camera's catching it, but roughing it up is going to help in the long run a lot, because sometimes the adhesive kind of gives out on the shanks, and they can start shifting around and then start squeaking. Some cobblers, they also nail them down. You can see the holes in here. Let me set this one out of the way. You can see the holes inside here. You could technically glue them or nail them in, just use a little tack there, but sometimes it's not the best idea. Like, you know, with this one here, it doesn't really have an actual insole for these, and then the nail may eventually start to shift and poke the person in the foot, because you'd have to have a nail way up here and on the back of the heel. The heel's easier to cover up, but this one here at the ball of the foot can be a little problemsome. I am still going to run a nail once I put this in on the back edge here, because we're going to have a few nails anyways going through here, and I'll just help secure that shank from sliding too much or anything like that. But trying to put a nail up in the front, I usually try to avoid it unless I know for a fact that it's going to have a full-length insole in there, or the person already puts like an orthotic or something inside. So thought I'd point that out, and then we're going to fill this up with cork, get that to cure, and then we'll continue on. So we'll see you back here in a little bit. Alright everyone, so as you've seen, we've got the red midsole on and everything as well on these guys. And yes, the gentleman did request the red midsole, and I think it looks kind of cool, especially once it's all finished out. Right now, obviously, it's still kind of a nude color because I had to sand the edges just a little bit. And it's time for that sole. Take it out of the oven. Ooh, that thing is warm. Alright. Go ahead and do it this way since the sole is a little warm. Plus it helps me eyeball where the center is, because the old sole that was on here was not in the best of shape. Now some of you might be also thinking, especially some of the cobblers, well, why didn't you go down a size, because this thing looks very big. Yes, it does look big. You want to know why? This is the biggest size they have in the Dainite. It's size 13 to 14. You can see right there, maybe 13 to 14. The next size down is a size 12. They go in whole sizes from this size downward, and it was too small, actually. It was a whole inch difference. I should grab a size 12 and show you guys real quick. Hang on. So I grabbed a black pair so you guys can see a little bit better, but yeah, so this is the size 12. You can see right there. It says right there, little size 12. And again, 13 to 14 right there at the bottom. Look at that. It's like a whole inch different. At least in length right there. And then the width, there's a few spots that it's pretty big difference there. So thought I'd show you guys the difference between the two sizes. Otherwise, the whole sizes, they're roughly about a 1/4 inch difference as you go down in size and everything. So it's kind of interesting how this size 12, it was just too short in areas and stuff, and just was not going to fit at all. So I'm going to go ahead and put the other sole on, press all that out, and let it kick. Alright everyone, so I've got the heel bases on and everything too on these, and since we are putting a Red Dainite heel base, also the Dainite heels, they've got the holes in there that we're going to put some nails into, but unfortunately the nails kind of get in the way of each other if you put nails into the heel base and then you put the top lift on, which is the rubber heel, and then you put nails through that, and they kind of get in the way of each other real badly. So there's one trick I like to do, and some cobblers might like this, other ones might be hating it because I don't like the wires that are shot into some heel bases. Like this is what's called a auto solar or wire machine as well. It shoots these wire nails in. I'll show you guys real quick. And looks just like that right there. So nice little wire nail, but that's what we're going to go ahead and run through it. We're just going to make sure to make it a little bit shorter because right now they're set to a cowboy boot sized heel, and this will just kind of help with the heel bases without getting in the way of anything else when we start putting the top lifts on. So let's shoot them in. voila, just like that. So nothing too crazy. These nails, you see they don't have heads on them, so they're not getting in the way too bad. They go in just deep enough, like this one's not shooting all the way through or anything. You can adjust the height as needed. Otherwise you would see little clinches on the inside. And if we were to do that, we have a special attachment that turns it into like a hook, but for future purposes, I'd rather not do it that way, in case they need to be rehealed or resoled down the road for this gentleman and everything. The wire nails and the adhesive are going to do phenomenal. Plus, we're also going to have the gripper nails going through the rubber heel as well. So it's going to be a lot going on if we start, doing too much, in other words. So let's do the other one, and I'm going to continue on. All right, everyone. So we've got the top lifts on. Top lifts are this section right here. Obviously that's what it is, the leather piece. We call that the base, or some people call it the heel block also. So on the inside you can see a little bit that it's darker brown right there, because I did do that first where I kind of inked it up and edged it. Makes it a little bit easier, not as messy when I have to do it later on. If I just nick it just a little bit on the sanders, I don't have to redo the ink completely. I can just touch it up afterwards. So as I'd mentioned, since we ran the wire nail through, now we're putting the nails in to all of these holes here. We're using this punch tool to go ahead and punch the nails down a little bit deeper, and see if we use these same nails right here like that, you can see that there's a head on them. And so if we use these nails like we typically would for the heel base or heel block to hold it down, the nail head would also kind of get in the way of these nails that hold down the top lift as well. Sometimes also you could just use the nails that you're putting into the top lift to hold down both the heel block and the top lift or heel base as well. We'll call it heel base or heel block. Sometimes I call them either or. So, sorry, that's just what I call them either way, heel base or heel block, but they're both the same thing. But anyways, sometimes you got the nails that will hold it all down together all at once. But throwing a little wire nail into that heel base right there definitely helps hold the heel base on separately when it's time to replace the top lift. There we go. So we've got those all in there. I'm going to let these sit cool for a little while, and then we're going to go ahead and sand it out. These kind of fit almost perfect, but also we did make our own heel base for it. You can see there's just a little bit of sanding to do, just see like there, and just a few spots. So I'll let them cool, and Alright everyone, so we kind of skipped along a little bit because I did the edging there. As you saw that I did the tape, just because it is a pain to keep that red there. Those Vibram Midsoles that we use, they're different colors, they really love edging. You know, using a neutral one's easy, but when we start using a black or a brown, it's a pain, honestly. So, but anyways, Marcus had gone ahead and finished up taking care of the uppers. A few things I didn't show, I guess you can say, on video was the welt. When I was stitching, I was having some issues with it, mainly because that leather is very worn out, very old, and so I had to use Bic 4 to kind of recondition it and make sure that it's completely safe, because the leather was a little dried out all over the place. But it turned out great. Surprisingly, I actually really liked working on these guys, considering after the welt was finally on and everything, they turned out really cool. It's like a red on red on red look, because the uppers, even though they're brown, they still have that reddish tint to it. Got the Red Dainite Soles on there, red midsole, brown welt, kind of a reddish brown stitching there, and we just did the red stitching at the bottom underneath too, so it's almost like a red on red all around. And thought I'd throw some red laces in there and everything as well. We can easily switch out the laces if we need to, but that's how it turned out. So these Bass and companies, you know, these are great. The new ones, honestly, I'll give you guys a full heads up, they are not worth the money at all, not even a little bit. The new ones out there, they're mass produced in a cheap quality. A little bit of threads to melt here, but the old ones, if you find some old ones like this, definitely an awesome pair to own. If I come across a pair anywhere, like thrift store shopping, they are very well worth having as you know, just a kick around pair, or just for certain occasions and stuff. Very nice. I like them. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Short questions, please. Otherwise, more detailed questions, if you need like to send a photo of something so we can give you a quote or whatever. Probably the fastest and best way would be if you message us through Facebook, which is Cobblers Plus, or Instagram, it's CobblersPlusCO. That way we actually get notified, because emails do get pretty backed up with tons of spam. Even surprisingly now, even some of the other places like Facebook, Instagram are starting to get a little backed up with spam. It's getting annoying. If you're a spammer out there watching these videos and you decide to spam me with junk mail, don't. You guys are screwing things up. All right, but time to take some quick pictures of them, and they're ready to go. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell icon, and we'll see you next time.